blankets handy. And we're gonna roll, let's go ahead and roll both of them into our cylinders, the long hot dog rolls. We'll do one for under the knees. We'll do one going long ways to the back of the mat so that we can roll the spine down. Give some support there. And then these are just, this one's under the knees, however you need to set that up. Make sure that your other one along the spine is giving you plenty of length here. So your legs can go long with just the lift of the knees. If it feels better to put the feet together and let your knees fall open into Baddha Konasana, feel free to add that. We'll allow for the spine to fully relax against your long blanket, shoulder blades dropping on either side of the blanket. Relax across the chest, letting the collarbones widen. And close the eyes. First couple breaths here, just getting settled onto your props, making sure that it's not poking in any one spot that isn't quite feeling right. Your legs feel supported in a way that you need. And then we'll start with a nice deep breath in through your nose. Open mouth, exhale. Do that again, big breath in. Let that breath go. Seal the lips, inhale through your nose. Soft exhale out the nose, just letting the air release out of your body. We'll continue with this easy breath. On each of your exhales, see where else in the body you can drop down a little closer to the floor, releasing any tense muscles. If you notice yourself getting into those usual spots, maybe it's clenching of the teeth or clenching through the hip flexors. We'll just gently relax those spaces. You can even add a little opening and closing of the mouth or rocking the head a little side to side if that's what your body needs. But we want to feel fully supported here. Blankets under the body, mat under you. The floor is strong enough to hold on to anything that you can release. Even here with your eyes closed, start to let your vision get a little fuzzy. Just noticing light or shadow coming through, remnants of colors, maybe the last thing that you looked at before you closed your eyes. We want it to get a little dreamy and a little foggy. Start to listen to your breath from inside of your ears. Maybe even can get quiet enough to hear your own heartbeat from within your ears. So this past weekend, we went on a camping trip just outside of San Antonio, and I was put in charge of the campfire. And I did not grow up as a Girl Scout. I don't have any of these kind of outdoor skills, but I'm getting very good at blowing very gently at fires. I have a very strong breath. So you start with a couple little twigs. You might throw a little bit of paper or something that'll catch fire pretty quickly. And then you just give it that gentle, give it a little bit of air until it starts to catch, and then you feed it a little more. And again, you give it a little air blowing through. And while I was working this flame, trying to grow it into a big enough fire that it might start to heat up the bigger logs that we had bought there. And I continue to just give it this nice, soft, long breath, right? Just to stoke the fire a little bit at a time. And I thought about one of our niyamas. So there's yamas and niyamas in that first branch of the 8-limb path of yoga. The yamas kind of cover the things that we're trying to not do, okay? So not be violent, not lie, things like that, not steal. And then the niyamas are things that we're trying to incorporate into our lives. So tapas are one of the niyamas, and tapas talks about our inner fire, our inner knowing, our inner learning. And the way that I learned about it is think of it in terms of whatever sparks something inside of you within the practice, within your joy for life, whatever that thing is, and then feeding that fire. And there's a literal fire, metaphorical, I should say, metaphorical fire that they talk about in the Yoga Sutras, talking about the inner heat that we're trying to grow. And we're trying to stoke our inner fire to grow and warm our bodies and our minds and kind of cast off a little bit more learning. Okay? Cast off the darkness of where we don't know something and adding to our body of knowledge. And just like stoking a fire at a campfire, you don't just set it and then leave it alone, you walk away. What ends up happening is the fire dies out. It needs cultivation. It needs continual tending to, it needs feeding, it needs maintenance. So as I worked on this campfire, grew it from a small little flame, got it into like a mini bonfire, and then eventually the firewood logs that we bought started getting hot enough. You could see the embers. You kind of agitate it a little, you blow on it, kind of poke it around, you add a little more dry leaves and whatnot. And eventually the fire gets to that nice warmth. So we try to do that with our practice. We find a nugget of information that really resonates with you, some part of the practice that makes sense, that makes you want to come back to the practice, to get back on your mat. But the learning doesn't stop in just that one moment. And we continue a little bit at a time, feeding our knowledge, feeding our practice, maintaining our practice. And this continual process is what keeps us engaged, that keeps us excited about our yoga. And our yoga is about that union of our mind and our body and our breath. So I invite you today as you work through your practice, as we work through our breath, we work through these longer held poses, working into those spaces that still feel tight, that are feeling not quite open. Where can we bring in some of this tapas, this inner knowledge, where you might want to feed it a little more, that you might want to grow it a little more? And can you start to feel the warmth of the learning within you? Take a few more breaths here, keeping the shoulders heavy as they drop on either side of your blanket. Feeling the rise and fall, chest, belly. Feeling the ebb and flow of the breath. And start to extend all your limbs nice and long. Arms reach overhead, toes reach far away. Start to find some movement, fingers, wrists, toes, ankles. And then pick a side to roll to. It doesn't matter which side. And then let's stay here just a couple breaths, feeling the earth underneath you. And then gently pressing all the way up. Move our blankets out of the way. We'll come into a cross-legged seat. If you want a little extra cushion under the seat, or if you need some support under the knees, feel free to add some blankets there. Let's come into a nice tall seated posture. Roll the shoulders a couple times. We'll pull those shoulders up and then back and then down. Soften your elbows. Let the hands rest on top of the thighs. Deep breath in. Slow breath out. One more here. So we're going to drop your chin down toward the chest. Just feel into the back of the neck here. You're going to take some gentle movement, just test it out. So whichever side feels the tightest right now. So for me, mine is the right side. I'm going to start bringing my opposite ear, my left ear, toward my left shoulder. And I'm going to go between all the way over to the left and then alternating, bringing it back to center. So I'm going to take some kind of half rotation, center to the outside and back in. And along this path, I'm going to see if there's a spot that feels particularly tight. Mine's about halfway between the center of my chest and my shoulder. And then you're going to add whichever ear you're leaning toward. That hand is going to come up and find the back of the skull. So this hand is going to be a little bit of weight. I'm not pulling on my head, I'm just adding some weight. Gently trying to stretch that side of the neck. Now notice if you feel the shoulder that's open starting to slump forward. That's kind of our computer stance. So we want to keep that shoulder pulled back, keep the spine long, and we're going to use just the weight of the head, dropping at an angle wherever you need it the most. Notice as you pause here how the sensation changes with each breath. Mine feels easier on the inhale. As I exhale, my shoulders drop a little more. I feel more intensity. So just noticing that. Now we want to be okay with discomfort here, the discomfort of the stretch, something that's been tight for a long time, finally getting some space. What we want to avoid is pain, so shooting pains, unbearable pain. But if it's a stretching sensation, if it's slight discomfort, see if you can stay with it. And sometimes that discomfort changes in sensation. It might become a little easier. It might loosen or free up. Sometimes I hear students tell me they finally got a pop somewhere in a joint or along some tendon, something released that had been held tight. So that might be something else that you experience. Take one more breath wherever you are. If you have the hand on top of the head, release it. And then again, you're going to do those half rolls. So I'm going to go all the way over to my left side and then all the way back down through center. I'm going to do that a couple times. And then we're going to meet back in center and then slowly lift the head. And then roll your shoulders a few more times and see if anything feels a little different. And drop the shoulders down. Stay long through the neck. We'll start to work the other side. So you can start by just dropping the chin down towards center. Take a slow roll over toward the opposite side, whichever side you didn't do. And we're going to work it back and forth from center to the side. And just notice where feels especially tight. Since we started on the side that was tighter, this side shouldn't feel as bad to begin, hopefully. And you're going to pick a spot somewhere along this path that's telling you, might need a little extra time there. And just like before, if you want to add a little bit of weight, you can bring that hand on top of the head. Let's give it some gentle encouragement. Keep the shoulder from collapsing forward and down. Keep it sliding back and behind. Spine stays long. Feel how sensation might change with each breath. Since this is our more open side, we won't spend as much time here. So let's take just a few more breaths. And then release that hand. And again, you'll move through into our little half rotations from center out to the side. And we'll bring the chin back through center. Slowly lift the head. Roll those shoulders back. And we're going to take a side bend from here. So let's slide your left hand out to the side. Sit tall, open the chest. Take your right arm up and over. We're going to stay here in the side bend, and then we're going to find some head rotation. So looking up toward the arm, turning the head, looking down toward the floor. Just alternating between the two. I feel so many crackles and pops. One more breath here. And bring everything back up through center. Stick to sit up on the other side. Crawl your right hand out. We'll take left arm up and over. Rotate the chest open, and we'll take those head rotations, turning the head up and turning the head down. We'll find our way back up. All right, we're gonna take some seated cat-cows from here. Bring the hands in front of your knees. We'll use this for traction. Inhale, you're gonna tip the pelvis forward, send the heart up and through. Exhale, rounding into the spine, kind of hang back into the back body. Use those hands on the knees, maybe a little side to side movement here. So follow your breath, slowly rolling through the spine, opening, and then opening the back side of the body. 2 more rounds here. And bringing it back to a neutral spine. Let's roll over the knees, finding child's pose. If you want, bring a blanket underneath the knees here. You can take our cylinder roll, or if you want to fold it into a rectangle, or if you have a bolster, this is a great spot for a bolster. Just to give something for your belly and your chest to rest on. Allow the hips to drop down toward the heels. Soften the shoulders here. You can soften the elbows and bend them a little. Feel the breath as it starts to puff up into the back body. And letting everything drop into the floor as you exhale. For me, when I use props in a child's pose, I end up turning my face towards my throat. Suffocate myself on my soft blankets or my bolster. So I'll give you a heads up about the halfway point. You can turn your head if you are also in the same position. You need to switch cheeks and turn the head. Here's the spot for it. One more breath here. And we'll gently press back up. Let's move some of our props off of the mat. We're going to roll down onto your belly. Come all the way down onto the belly. Hands underneath your shoulders to begin. You're going to slide your right arm out to the side. And you're going to press with your left hand, roll your left hip over the right. And we're going to bend the left knee and set the toes behind you. Big opening of the right side of the chest. Head can relax into the ground. So especially since we tend to be in a very caved in posture in front of a computer, this might feel especially tight. So you can kind of play with the positioning where your right hand is. The more straight out to the side, you'll feel it right across the pec. Taking it a little bit higher, you might start to feel some of that stretch moving more toward the ribs. Bringing the arm just a little lower, you might feel less sensation. So find kind of that happy, sweet spot where you feel just enough. And then we'll settle the body down into the floor. Three more breaths here. And we'll roll back onto the belly. Slide your right arm back in. And let's set up for the other side. So left arm's going to go out to the side. I'm going to roll right hip over left. Bend that right knee. Touch the toes down behind you. Again, you can kind of play with the positioning of the left arm. Find where your sweet spot is. Use your right arm for support. few more breaths here. Roll back onto the belly. We're just going to stack the palms. Let the forehead relax down. Gently press your way up. All right, we're going to take a standing forward fold so that we can use gravity to help us with releasing through the spine. So I would start just a hair wider than hips width distance here. And you can just take this forward fold, kind of a ragdoll shape. So just let everything start to fall. Realize that a hoodie today is not the best for trying to talk into a microphone. Soften your knees here. Your belly might even touch your thighs. Take the first couple breaths, just kind of shake out your head and lean into the toes. So from the side view, I want to just make sure that y'all see I'm not hanging back in my heels where my toes might be fluttering. I want to bring some of my weight forward into my toes so that my hips end up in the same line as my ankles. So I don't want to be behind my ankles. I want to be in the same line as my ankles. And that'll really allow for the spine to fully release, because if I hang out back behind, my legs are now taking more of the weight, whereas I want my head to fully help lengthen the spine. Once you're in your forward fold, you can either grab opposite elbows here, take a little bit of a sway, or you can lace the hands behind the head. Let the elbows come closer to each other. And you're going to use those arms as added weight. Lean into the toes a little, soften your knees as much as you need. So we want to get as much release in the back as possible. So this isn't necessarily a hamstring stretch that we're looking for. We're looking for spinal release. Let's stay here a few more breaths. Release the hands down. We're going to turn the toes out, drop into the hips, coming into a squat. And we'll just use the hands for support, and you can take a little bit of a rock side to side, just working those hips a little bit. And then we'll come back down to a seat, and you're going to extend your legs long. Keep a micro bend behind the knees. If you want, you can even bring one of your blankets, rolled blankets, underneath here. And we're going to lift the sits bones behind us, get that flush out from underneath. And you should already start to feel some stretch in the back of the legs. So this one, we are looking for a little bit more hamstrings. Hands will be next to you for some support. We're going to sit tall first, kind of a variation of staff pose, Dandasana. Keep the shoulders dropped down away from the ears. And then we're going to tuck the chin here. So long spine, long legs with a little micro bend at the knees, head heavy. Take one more breath here. Lift the gaze. We're going to start to take this into a softer forward fold. If you have, again, a bolster or something, or you can take your second blanket and just fold it up so you've got a little bit more height. I'm going to bring it a little bit closer to my belly, so when I start to take my fold, my belly can rest on my blanket. And then I have a bad habit of always flexing my feet, so I'm going to leave this a little open for y'all for whatever feels best through the legs. I'm starting to take a forward fold, using your props any way that you need. Going to be a little bit of a round here, releasing through the spine, still working the backs of the legs. Two more slow breaths in. Use your hands for support. Slowly walk yourself back up, stacking one vertebrae on top of the other. Now let's move our props, and we're going to refold our blankets so that we have two long cylinders, or you can use a bolster here. So this is about the size of a bolster once I've folded both of them into my two long rectangles. And we're going to roll ourselves down onto the back. Lift the hips, slide your bolster or your folded blankets under the hips. Let's take a couple breaths here to settle onto your blankets. Make sure that the back and the hips are supported properly. Let the arms relax next to you. From here, we're going to pick up your right foot. You're going to cross it over your left thigh. Allow your right knee to drop forward. You can stay with this figure four position, or if you want a little bit more intensity, you could bring the legs closer into the body, even lacing the hands behind the thigh and drawing it in. And with the lift of the hips, you're going to get a little bit more intensity of the stretch, maybe through the back or through the outer edge of your right hip. Just kind of figure out where that happy place is. We don't need the intensity at a full 10. You might want to start at like a 6 or a 7. Last breath here. We'll release out of our figure four. Step the feet a little wider on your mat, and we'll windshield wiper the knees side to side. When you're ready, reset the feet hips width distance. You'll cross your left ankle over your right thigh. Let your left knee drop forward. You can stay here with the right foot down, or you can bring the legs closer into the body. One more breath here. Release across the legs. Step your feet a little wider. Windshield wiper your knees side to side. Bring the feet back to the floor. Lift your hips. We'll slide your blankets over to the left side. Let your spine settle back down onto the ground. And you might take some windshield wipers, settling the low back into the floor. Hug your knees into the chest. Take a little bit of a rock. And then extend your legs long. We're going to keep your shoulders and your hips on the ground. Walk your feet over to the right edge of your mat. I'm going to scoot back so I don't kick my other props around. So heels walk over to the right edge of your mat. You can play with crossing one ankle over the other. Keep that left hip anchored down. I want to stretch through that left side. If you want to add more in the upper body, you could take your left wrist and your right hand and drawing that up and over toward the right. Depends on how you're feeling today. One more breath here. Walk the feet back through center, arms back through center if you have released them up. We'll take everything over toward the left side, playing with the cross of the ankles. Keep your right hip anchored into the ground. If you want to add the upper body, grab your right wrist with your left hand. One more breath here. Bring the legs back if you center. We're going to draw the knees in to the belly. Drop your knees over to the left. We're going to bring these blankets in between the knees. You've got like a little pillow here. If you have a bolster, you just drop the bolster in between. So this will keep our hips neutral. That same separation between the legs that you would have from one hip to the other. And then open your right arm out to the side, coming into our twist. Depending on how you're feeling in the neck, you could turn your head away from the knees or toward the knees, or just keep it neutral. Relax the low back, soften the belly muscles. One more breath here. You could just leave your blankets in between the knees and just roll everything over to the other side. Or you could release, take the knees over, readjust, bring your props back in. And then we'll let the left arm fall open to the side. You can find a good position for your head, turning toward the knees or away, or maybe keeping it neutral. One more deep breath here. And release the blankets or your bolster from between the legs. We'll bring the knees back, decenter, reset the hips. Draw your knees in and take them wide to either side of your ribs. If you prefer a happy baby, you can grab for the feet or the big toes. And we'll set up for Shavasana. What I would recommend if you're still having kind of some low back pain is to take your folded blankets, keep them in those rectangles, or if you have a bolster works the same. Sliding that pretty much almost to your bum so that you get a nice lift under the thighs. That'll keep your knees bent so that your low back can then relax a little more into the ground. If you want to use those blankets as proper blankets covering the body, especially if you're feeling cold, make this as cozy as you can. Relax the shoulder blades down. Let's take a nice deep breath in through the nose here. And just like you're trying to stoke a fire, purse your lips, blow gently. Again, full breath in through the nose. Last time, try to make this your longest exhale. Breathe in. Pursed lips, breathe out. Take a natural breath in through your nose and out the nose. Letting your breath come back to normal, no more controlling of the breath. Feeling the gentle rise and fall of your chest, of your belly. Let your limbs get nice and heavy. Make sure those shoulder blades are flattening down into the ground. We'll take our last few minutes here. No other obligation than to lie here and breathe. Bring awareness back to your breath. Invite movement back into your fingers and your toes. Roll through your wrists and your ankles. We'll take a full body stretch, yawn, move your jaw around. Draw the knees into the chest, roll over to your left, coming into fetal position. Take a few breaths here. Use your hands for support and press your way up to a comfortable seat. And keep the eyes closed. Pause here for a moment, feeling the length of the spine, the expanse of your breath. We'll bring the palms to touch at heart center. Let's seal our practice tonight with a single Om. First, take a full breath in through your nose. Sigh this breath out. Inhale to chant. Om. Namaste. I can feel my hair flopping around, the weight of it. Hopefully you